It's bad advice. It's really, 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 really bad sports card investing advice. Yet it is being repeated all over social media today, and it is probably something that you have been told. And that is buy the card, not the grade. Well, if you care about your cards from an investment value, if you care about what your collection is going to be worth sometime in the future, that advice is horrific. And I'll tell you why next. The Geoff Wilson Show is brought to you by Arena Club, the official home of slab packs. Now available every day, slab packs offer an exciting way to collect graded cards with confidence. Plus, every pack comes with an instant offer to buy your slab. Don't miss out. Explore the latest slab packs and more by downloading the Arena Club app. Just search Arena Club in your app store and use promo code SCI20 for 20% off your first purchase. It happened a few weeks ago. I opened up one of my social media apps and I saw another content creator in this space post this statement: buy the card, not the grade. And then I saw the post get tons of likes and I saw all of these people in the comments say, hooray, hooray, hooray. And I saw other sports card content creators start spewing the same thing. And I felt like putting a warning label over all of it. Because if you only care about your cards from a collecting standpoint, if they are your PC and you truly don't care about the value of those cards in the long term, then sure, listen to the advice. Buy the card, not the grade. But if you care, if any part of you is thinking about what are these cards going to be worth in the long run, what could this collection be worth in 10, 20, 30 years from now or more, please don't listen to that advice. And I'll tell you why now. In fact, I'm going to use data to tell you the story. Because data, sports card market data, we're going to look at some facts. I'm not going to give opinion. I'm going to tell you the truth by sharing these statistics. And these stats that I'm going to give you right now, they come from Market Movers. I have gone back to January 1st of 2018, and I have taken a few of the most iconic cards in the sports card industry, and I wanted to look at the value of those cards back on January 1st of 2018, before the run-up in prices started to happen, before the pandemic hit and threw everything to the stratosphere. A little bit before any of that occurred, January 1st of 2018 through today. And I wanted to look first and foremost at the 1986 Fleer Michael Jordan card, one of the most iconic sports cards of all time, one that you certainly know, one that gets a lot of attention in the sports card market. In PSA 10 condition, from January 1st, 2018 through today, that card has gone up 1,030%. A very nice investment. In fact, specifically back on January 1st of 2018, that card was selling for around $20,000, and today that card sells for around $200,000. In PSA 9, during that same time period of January 1st, 2018 through today, that 1986 Fleer Michael Jordan card is up 710%. It went up from around $3,100 back on January 1st, 2018 to today, it's around $22,600. 710%, still a very, very good return on investment over the last 7 years, but not as good of a return on investment as the 1,030% increase that you would have gotten from the PSA 10. And then let's go down another grade, PSA 8. That card during that same time period is up 400%. So the PSA 10 is up 1,030%. The PSA 9 is up 710%. And the PSA 8 is up 400% during the exact same time period over the last 7 years. Interesting. Does this correlate to other iconic cards? Well, how about something a little newer? How about the 2003 LeBron James Topps Chrome base card? A less expensive card, but still an iconic card, still a card that many people would love to own in their collection. Once again, going back to the beginning of 2018 through today, the PSA 10 of that card is up 517%. It was $837 back at the beginning of 2018. Today, it sells for approximately $5,000, up 517%. The PSA 9 during the exact same time period is up 287%. And the PSA 8 is up 145%. So for two of the most iconic basketball cards in recent memory, the PSA 10 from a percentage standpoint has way outperformed the PSA 9 or PSA 8 in recent years. How about the 1996 Topps Kobe Bryant card? Let's look at another card, another iconic card. This one even less expensive. So a card that's really attainable for a lot of people. In PSA 10, over the last 7 years, going back to the beginning of 2018, that card is up 1,412%. You could have bought that card for just $53 at the beginning of 2018 in PSA 10 condition. And today that card's around $825. So it's up 1,412%. The PSA 9 is up only 244%. And the PSA 8 is up only 96%. So again, the PSA 10 outperforming the PSA 9 and the PSA 8 by percentage price appreciation. And in this case, the difference is extreme. From 1,412% to 244% and 96% over the course of the last 7 or so years. All right, well, it's not just baseball. Let's look at some other sports too. Let's switch over to football and let's look at the 2000 Bowman Tom Brady base card during that same time period. From the beginning of 2018 through today, the PSA 10 is up 1,096%. You could have bought that card for around $766 back at the beginning of 2018. Today, that card is going to set you back over $7,700. The PSA 9 during the same time period, up 552%. And the PSA 8, up 345%. So once again, the PSA 10's performance from a percentage standpoint has about doubled the performance of the PSA 9. And the PSA 9 is almost double the PSA 8 in terms of percentage gain over that period of time. If you invested your money in the PSA 10, you were doing so much better, not just from a dollar standpoint, but also from a percentage standpoint than if you had invested your money in multiple PSA 9s or many PSA 8s, for example, of this 2000 Bowman Tom Brady card. What about hockey? Just switch gears entirely. Let's look at Wayne Gretzky's 1979 O-Pee-Chee card, a card that, by the way, interestingly, has not seen nearly the same price appreciation as the other cards that I just mentioned. Jordan, LeBron, Kobe, Brady. Gretzky's not up nearly as much from a percentage standpoint, which is kind of interesting. You can draw your own theories as to why that may be. Maybe the market in Canada just hasn't grown to the same extent as it has in the US. That's part of my theory. A lot of the sports card market growth over the last several years has come with the addition of new collectors in the US. I don't know that many new collectors have come along in Canada at the same pace as they've come along in the US. And there's a large percentage of American sports fans that just aren't that interested in hockey. And so I'm guessing that probably ties into the reasoning. But nonetheless, it has still gone up, just not as up as the other cards. That 1979 O-Pee-Chee Wayne Gretzky card in a PSA 9 is up 290% over the course of that time period. I'm not using the PSA 10 here because the PSA 10, I think that's a Pop 2. And that's a multi-million-dollar card that hardly ever sells. So we can't really use that as a data point. But the PSA 9 transacts more often. So we're using that as the the higher grade data point here. It's up 290%. That card was around $23,000. If you go back to the beginning of 2018, now that card is $92,000, I think, or something of that nature as of the last sale, up 290%. The PSA 8 during the same time period is up 209%. The PSA 7 is up only 96%. We have a very clear pattern emerging. By the way, a pattern, if you want to go look at baseball cards, if you want to go look at iconic soccer cards, you're going to see the same pattern emerge. It is very clear. The data tells you a very, very clear story with all of these cards that the highest grade accelerates in price the fastest, and not just in dollars, because of course you have to pay more to obtain the highest grade. So it would make sense that it would go up more in terms of total dollars. But from a percentage growth standpoint, from a return on investment standpoint, the highest grade clearly produces the greatest percentage gain, the greatest return on investment during this time period, no matter what iconic card you look at across the various sports. You're likely to see this exact same pattern play out. And by the way, if you go ultra high end, if you go to the very, very top of the sports card market, it's more true there than ever. Take, for example, the 1952 Topps Mickey Mantle. Perhaps the most iconic sports card of all time. The card that in PSA 10 condition, only 3 of them exist in the world. It's the ultimate holy grail of sports cards for many collectors. And we featured 2 of those 3 copies extensively on the Sports Card Investor channel. Marshall Fogel's collection and Ken Kendrick's collection both contain one of the PSA 10s of that 1952 Topps Mickey Mantle. Marshall Fogel in the 1990s paid $121,000 for his PSA 10 copy of that card. At the time, people called him crazy. At the time, people say they said they could not believe how much he overpaid. People literally said he was crazy for paying that price for that card. It set an all-time record, for a card purchase, and people thought he was bananas. Well, today, that card that he paid $121,000 for in the 1990s would sell most likely for between $30 and $50 million in today's market. Of course, we don't know exactly what it would sell for because a PSA 10 hasn't sold for decades. But if a PSA 10 were to come up on auction today, I think 30 to 50 million is where that card would land. An absolutely incredible, unprecedented, wild return on investment that Marshall Fogel would be looking at on that card should he ever actually decide to sell it someday in the future, which I don't think he's going to do. But if any of those come up for sale, you will see how incredible of a return on investment those gentlemen got for buying that card. But what if Marshall Fogel had taken that same $121,000 and invested it in multiple Mickey Mantle PSA 9 cards or a bunch of Mickey Mantle PSA 8 cards? Guess what? He would not be sitting on as much value today as he is sitting on by having the PSA 10. At the very high end of the sports card market, this makes even more of a difference. The perfect card, the gem mint card, the most coveted grade, the most scarce version of the card in perfect condition is the one that accelerates in value the quickest. And by the way, this is no different in sports cards than you see in other collectibles markets and even in things like real estate. If you talk to savvy real estate professionals, they'll often tell you that the trophy house, the top of the market house that is in a incredible location on an incredible piece of land, is the home that is going to outperform the market, is the home that is going to accelerate the quickest. For example, if you have a house that is an incredible lot on the waterfront in an area where waterfront property is in extreme demand and there's very little supply of it, the most valuable waterfront home, the one with the best lot, is likely the one that's going to accelerate in value the most from a return on investment standpoint, because it is the most scarce, the most rare, the highest quality, the top of the market. That is the one that people covet the most, the one that people want the most, the one that people believe to be the best property in that area. And that is the one that often will have the most value appreciation over time. Now, this rule, by the way, in real estate doesn't apply in areas where they can keep building, in areas where the lot itself is not rare or unique. If you have a subdivision that's being built in the middle of the state that, and you get the most expensive home in that subdivision, and then they start building other subdivisions down the road because the land is not necessarily at a premium, you don't always see that most expensive home accelerate the quickest in value in those scenarios. But if that most expensive home is iconic, rare, has something very special to it because it's in a very unique setting, a very unique piece of land, that is where you see that extreme value appreciation. And that is the exact same thing with the sports card markets. If you invest in iconic and if you invest in scarce, then you want to get your hands on the highest quality copy you can possibly get. And if you get that combo of things, iconic, scarce, and quality, you have an asset that is likely to outperform the entire market and even other copies of that asset in lower quality by a lot. And as you think about investing in sports cards long term and building your collection, if you care about your collection from a dollar standpoint, then you should care about this. What I'm telling you is you're actually better off having a smaller collection with less cards, but buying the best of the best that you can afford. That will do better for you in the long run. And now, of course, when I say this, let me be clear, I'm talking about this in relation to iconic cards of all-time greats. I'm not talking about 2023 Victor Wembanyama cards. And this whole entire thing that I'm saying today, by the way, probably doesn't apply to ultra modern very well. Because ultra modern, you don't have the same degree of scarcity. You don't have the same degree of iconic. It's different. What I'm talking about here is when you have one of the cards off the list of the top 100 or the top 500 sports cards of all time, the top iconic cards of all time, vintage or all-time greats like Jordan and LeBron and Kobe and Tom Brady. Those are the cards that I'm talking about. Those are the cards that are iconic, that are scarce, and you want to get the top possible quality version of that card because that is going to be the one that accelerates the quickest. And there is a couple of reasons for this, right? There's some reasons why this exists. If you have one of those copies, that is the copy that the top 1% is going to covet. Or maybe it's even the 1% of the 1%, right? If you've got a billionaire or you've got a famous athlete that gets curious about sports cards, which by the way, seems to be happening every single week now, right? That we're getting these new big athletes or big investors that are coming into the sports card market. It's happening all the time. And they're curious about it, and they want to start buying some stuff for their collection. Do you think they're going to go buy a bunch of PSA 9s and PSA 8s? Or are they going to say, give me the absolute best copy that exists, or at least the best copy that they can get their hands on? They want the best of the best. They want the PSA 10 Jordan. They don't want the PSA 9 Jordan. They want the PSA 10 Brady. They don't want the PSA 9 Brady. They want the best of the best. The 1% of the 1% wants the best of the best. And when that money comes in the sports card market, that's what causes a lot of that high-end stuff to really, really accelerate. And don't forget, it only takes two people in an auction to compete to get a super high auction result, right? Auctions are ultimately the price that comes from a card in an auction is simply what two people bidding each other were willing to pay. And it's actually that underbidder, the person who stops bidding, that actually determines the final price, because then the winning bidder is one bid above what the other person stopped bidding at. So it's actually that second person that kind of determines what the card is eventually going to end up being sold for. But when you have one of those special pieces, when you have one of those iconic, scarce, highest quality possible pieces hit the auction block, you often will have a couple of bidders that say, I absolutely have to have that card. And they'll go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And the card will go past anybody's expectation of what it was going to sell for. That is, by the way, never going to be the case with a lower graded copy of the card. You're not going to have two bidders that are both going to say, I absolutely have to have that, and then go crazy, bid, and cause the thing to go way beyond what anyone thought was possible. You're only going to find that type of behavior with the absolute best copy of the card, because anyone bidding for a lower copy of the card where there's more of them out there, it's more common. They're just, once the auction hits a certain price, they're just going to say, oh, I'll just hold off till the next auction. I'll be able to find another one of those again. But when it's the highest quality copy of the card, you often get the bidders saying, that's the best of the best and I want it. And that's what causes those outlandish results to occur. And once one of those outlandish results occurs, it now sets a new price level for the card. And now that card will likely sell at that price level or above in future auctions. And that's how you see these PSA 10 examples that I gave you earlier in this show accelerating so far beyond what the PSA 9s and the PSA 8s did during similar time periods. Now, look, I know that there are a lot of people listening to this show right now that are probably saying, but I'm a collector and I only care about collecting. Great. If you truly only care about collecting and you truly don't care what your collection is going to be worth in the long run, then I agree with the advice, buy the card and not the grade. But most of the people listening to this show have at least part of their collection where they actually do care about the value and what that collection might be worth in a year, 5 years, 10 years, 30 years, maybe when they eventually hand it down to their kids or their grandkids someday. And look, I've got part of my collection where I truly don't care about the grade and I truly bought the card and not the grade. I've got a large collection of Florida Gator cards. You guys have probably seen me showcase it on the Sports Card Investor channel before. I've got a lot of Tim Tebow and I've got all kinds of other Florida Gator players, Kyle Trask and Kyle Pitts and Kadarius Toney. I don't think he's even in the NFL anymore. But these players who over time, meant a lot to me at the University of Florida. I've been going all the way back to Emmitt Smith. I got a lot of his stuff and, on forward through all of the years, random guys like Rex Grossman or Danny Warfel, Heisman winner, right? Like all these players. Well, most of their cards have very little value. These are not super valuable cards, right? They're not cards. They're certainly not investment cards. They're cards that I care about personally. They're cards that contain personal meaning to me. When I buy these cards, when I buy a Tim Tebow card, or when I buy a Kyle Trask card, I am buying that card simply for the purpose that it means something to me. It is a personal item. I have no investment desire. There's no investment thought, because if there was, I wouldn't be buying that card. Nobody is buying Kyle Trask today from an investment standpoint, even though, by the way, goodness, I hope he gets a shot at starting in the NFL someday. He's been the backup, in Tampa the last few years, and he's a great quarterback. Somebody give this guy a shot to play a few games in the NFL one year, and then actually maybe his cards will be worth something. But I'm not buying them thinking at all that they're ever going to be worth anything. And if that's the case, then yeah, buy the card. Don't buy the grade. That's what I do with my Gator collection. Actually, the vast majority of my Gator collection is not even graded. And that might shock people because I'm such a proponent for grading. And the reason why I'm such a proponent for grading is that if you're buying cards from an investment standpoint, grading is almost always a good idea when you're talking about the iconic, the scarce, those types of cards. I'm generally pro-grading with almost everything in my collection, but not with my Florida Gator stuff, not with my true PC stuff. In that case, buy the card, not the grade. That is fine. But any part of your collection where you care about value, please don't listen to that advice. And it's dangerous that so many content creators and people on social media today are just throwing that advice out there without any type of warning or disclaimer, because if a new collector hears it and they start buying a lot of lower grade cards of a whole bunch of different cards, they're going to realize down the road, from an investment standpoint, they would have been a lot better off buying a lot less cards, but buying the highest possible grades, because that is actually how you can make a better return long-term in the market according to what the data tells us, or at least that's what I believe to be the case with how I have read the data. Okay. What do you guys think? What do you guys think of that advice? And are there other investing advices that you have heard, other sports card advices that you have heard that you don't agree with? Let me know in the comments. And of course, don't forget that these full-length Geoff Wilson Show episodes are available on Apple Podcasts as well as Spotify, and of course, YouTube under the Geoff Wilson Show. So make sure you are subscribed everywhere so you can listen to the show on the go. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week with my next one. Take care.